Big news, actually. The hairband rockers are finally starting to speak out about trans issues. So, Paul Stanley, do you know who you got to know who Paul Stanley is, right?
Not by name.
I think he was considered was he considered Star Child in Kiss? I think that was Paul Stanley. He was the front man for Kiss, right? One of them. So he
The
was
band?
one of the. Oh my gosh.
We're talking
So
about
you
the
don't.
band.
Yes, the band.
I just want to be sure.
Okay. So I thought you were gonna say the band, like you didn't know who Kiss was. So
I just want to make sure we're not talking about them.
yeah. So his post yesterday said there is a big difference between teaching acceptance and normalizing and even encouraging participation in a lifestyle that confuses young children into questioning their sexual identification as though some sort of game, and then parents in some cases allow it. They are individuals who as adults may decide reassignment is their needed choice, but turning this into a game or parents normalizing it as some sort of natural alternative, or believing that because a little boy likes playing dress up in his sister's clothes or a girl and her brothers, we should lead them steps further down a path that's far from innocence of what they are doing, with many children who have no real sense of sexuality or sexual experience caught up in the fun of using pronouns and saying what they identify as. Some adults mistakenly confuse teaching acceptance with normalizing and encouraging a situation that has been a struggle for those who truly affected and have turned into a sad and dangerous fad. It's quite the statement,
Wow.
because
Brave.
we don't see enough. Yeah, we don't see enough people coming out here. And again, because so many progressives like to go after conservatives and say and talk about like the hairband rockers who were like, you guys were accepting of this gender nonconformity, but it's like there's a huge difference between being gender nonconforming and then like telling kids that they can transition, right? Like that's where I think people, and so it's really great to have these people that dressed up in wigs and heels and spandex in the 80s coming
Mhm.
out and talking like this.
That's amazing.
Which was and that it didn't even start there, because now do you know who D. Snider is?
No idea.
D. Snider is the lead singer for Twisted Sister,
No
which their
idea.
song call is one of their songs is we're not gonna take it. That's a, okay, just go look it up.
Ah,
So
I'm good.
now the thing about D. Snider, he was very progressive when it came to like COVID and stuff like that. He made a lot of splashes for like being very like pro like forced vaccines and stuff like that. But now he even jumped into this today and said, you know what? There was a time where I felt pretty too. Glad my parents didn't jump to any rash conclusions. Well said. And because Paul Stanley was getting a lot of hate for what he said. And actually I got blocked by ContraPoints for just asking. She went after him, and I was like, for what? For wanting kids to wait till they're adults to transition, and then I got blocked. So,
Wow.
but yeah, D. Snider. So that's, I mean, it's a pretty big deal when you have a lot of um, these old school rockers just coming out and like, okay,
Yeah.
talking sense.
And it makes sense
Actually,
that they're the
yeah,
ones saying this. And I know I've actually throughout the years been friends with like not emos. I don't know all the titles, but you know, with the dark makeup, the dark clothes, hair, whatever, and they're super
yeah,
bait. Um,
goth or emo, or yeah, most of the time they've been. The problem is it's kind of gone from goth to emo to then there was the scene kids,
right.
and then to now it's basically become trans. But the only difference is everybody's like transitioning, like taking hormones, right?
Yeah, but in the old days, which wasn't that long ago because I'm not that old, they were like fine and smart, and because they didn't care what people think. Um, so yeah, I think it only makes sense that someone like that is writing that.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, these guys. I mean, I'll pull up another picture here in a second, but so then White Axe says, I'm a big Bowie fan. He was the androgynous king. He was most definitely a man owned it. I love that about him. Make it androgyny great again. This has been the thing is we've been kind of saying for a long time, right? Like, and this is why the ideology is so regressive, is because they will take a child, like they used to be like, GNC people are great. Like we should be accepting people that are gender nonconforming all the time. And now they're like, oh wait, you're gender nonconforming and you're 4 years old. You know what? You're probably trans. Let's transition you. It's insane.
To be honest, I don't understand completely the, gender non-conforming, because to me that doesn't sound like a thing either. It's like we are men and women biologically, but how we're men and women, it's like there's no limit. So why do we even need something called gender non-conforming? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's actually a good. That's a good point. I never thought about it that way. Because yeah, it's like, but it is gender nonconforming is that you don't conform to the stereotypes, right? And that's what
Yeah,
it's
but I mean,
basically
we're
is
talking about
stereotypes.
the West. I mean, I think gender non-conforming is a term that would make sense in the Middle East or like other places in the world where they're not progressive and open. So, yeah, I've
Well,
never understood that term.
I got in trouble one time for saying, oh, what did somebody say? They said something about Jesus would be against this stuff, and I'm like, Jesus wore a dress. What are you talking about? Like, because in other parts of the world,
Yeah.
but in other parts of the world, like what we would consider a dress here is considered male attire in other
Mhm.
areas. So it's not, it's basically it's based on culture. And so yeah, you have what are considered tomboys, but there's no wrong way to be a boy or a girl. And this is what people don't even understand. You know, I transition, but I mean I don't even fit. I'm not like this girly girl, right? I'm actually more tomboyish than anything, and that's just always been my personality. But like you said, it's you do you.
Yeah, yeah, because you can't be a girl the wrong way, you can't be a boy the wrong way, because that's just what you are biologically, and that will never change. So you can't be bad at your biology.
Yeah. No, no, you can't. You're right. And biology is one thing, and this is what everybody's like. Well, if now, what do you actually say when somebody asks you, well, if being trans is not based on stereotypes, then what is gender dysphoria? Because I
I,
have my answer, but I'm curious what you say.
yeah, it's funny because I talked to my boyfriend about this today. I just bought a shower curtain that I thought it had a neutral color, but now that it's like in my bathroom, I feel like it's too girly. And then I said, don't judge me, but I feel a little bit dysphoric right now. And then he said, oh my God, that's so irrational. I said, dysphoria is irrational. Look at me. So, um, so I would say dysphoria is just really stereotypical. I don't know. I think gender dysphoria is really about stereotypes, and we can't help
Yeah,
it. So
I think there is the aspect of the stereotypes that you want to be presented to society as the opposite sex, right? Like you want to live and be perceived that way. But for me, dysphoria is more about secondary sex characteristics,
yeah,
right? How, like, if I was to look in the mirror with no clothes on, and even if I had a shaved head, like, what would I want to see? And it would be about, I don't want to see a beard. I don't want to see, I want to see breast. I want to see, like, that's what the dysphoria is there. It's really, I think early on, Ariel asked me one time, she was like, if you were trapped on a desert island and naked, would you still have dysphoria? And the answer was always yes.
of course,
So,
yeah. And
and so I
also,
think
without
that's
the
where,
internet, you would still have it.
well, actually, who is it? Isabella Maria de De Luca, I think, said something about this yesterday. She posted a video on Twitter, and she said, like, what she was answering people that always ask her, what if your kid was trans, right? And she said, she was like, my kid wouldn't be trans because I would take their phone, I would take the internet, I would take all this stuff away, right? And I mean, I follow her and she follows me, and I commented, I said, you're, to an extent, I agree. Your kid would not be trans because I don't think that kids can be trans, because the act of being trans is to actually transition medically. And I don't think kids should be allowed to do that, you know, but your kid could have dysphoria. I said, I grew up in the 90s without the internet, without all this stuff. And I know I had dysphoria. I knew something was different. I knew that I wanted, I wanted to be a girl and not, the boy that I was growing up as. And so, and she actually responded to that and said, well, I agree. She actually agreed with what I said. So, there is a big difference between, using the term trans and I'm very careful with my words. I always use the word dysphoric children, because to say trans is very different.
Yeah.
So I actually,
I just want to say, I go as far to say children with symptoms of gender dysphoria, because like gender dysphoria to me, and this is, maybe me being a nerd, but it's chronic. And kids, you don't know if kids have a chronic disorder. So yeah, but it's complicated. But yeah, you can't be trans as a kid, especially not nowadays with all the social.
That's actually a really good point, because I mean, I think I'm very, very meticulous with the words I use, like usually. So yeah, but that's actually a good point, because gender dysphoria would be diagnosed with a persistence of, I guess, incongruence is what they say, of uncomfortability with your biological sex, or I guess that with your secondary sex characteristics that you were born as. But it's interesting. So actually, so this show is a little bit about me promoting a lot of my stuff as well that I've been doing for the weeks. But I didn't write this article for the Blaze because I don't work for the Blaze. But this was actually about this, and Michelle asked me for a quote yesterday. So I said about the Paul Stanley coming out. Let me see, where is my quote? Here we go. I just said all too often. I told her, I said, all too often we see celebrities keep quiet on these topics for fear of being called a bigot. But there is nothing bigoted about wanting kids to be kids and waiting until adulthood before making permanent decisions about their lives. Adults can do what they want, but there is no need to medicalize children. When we know 88% end up growing out of their dysphoria by the age of 20. I said, he's right. Accepting and promotion are two different things, which it makes sense. Like, what we can talk about kids. Like, did you see that study, the Frontier study that came out? I guess it came out in 2016, but it was back in the news this week. But it said 88%.
Oh, what? Sorry.
No. So that study had said that 88% of kids grew out of it so they started a lot of these kids. The mean age of the start was age of 7. They started them in 89 at the age of 7, and then the mean age when they followed up was the age of 20. And by that time, 88% of them had grown out of it. And that's the longest. I mean, it was only 180 something participants, but it's the longest and the largest study. So when I posted that, people were like, oh, 180 participants. I'm like, it's still the largest study, which actually goes into how just understudied this is, because the industry will completely shut down any conversation. They don't even want to do these studies because they're afraid of how they're afraid of how they're going to, what the results will be, and the results will actually go against them. I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let me see.
But we also need to understand, what does it mean to accept these children? Because giving them puberty blockers and surgeries is not about accepting. It's not acceptance. It's actually, it's not good. It's not good, and it's not ethical to do that to children who cannot consent. So like
Yeah.
we should really have a talk about what's accepting, because they really steal those words, and they I just sometimes I just hate these terms: authentic, accepting, and they made it really woke.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And they don't want to hear the harmful side effects. I remember Abigail Schreier had an article with Marcy Bowers as well as Erica Anderson. And Marcy Bowers is the president of WPATH now. And in the article, she said she's not a fan of puberty blockers. And this was before the video came out of her saying that 100% of the time a child that's blocked is never able to orgasm as an adult. And so she knows as a surgeon, and the whole article was about how they expect surgeons to be miracle workers on this stuff, because I think I actually posted my last video I posted last Thursday was about Mia Ashton's article that she had wrote from a child who was part of the Dutch study who died from complications from a vaginoplasty. And it's like the only reason why this person had to have the skin graft from the colon, which made it and make it a much more risky surgery, is because they didn't have enough tissue growth because they put them on puberty blockers. And that study was basically hidden. Like I said, it was that happened in 2016, and we're just now talking about it now. And
Yeah,
so, and I've been in this.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I made a mistake when I talked about it on my channel. I forgot to say that it was in 2016, but it's like I haven't heard about this before now, or a couple of days ago. Like why
And
is
this
that?
is the thing. And that's the thing is I've done a lot of research. So I mean, I came out in 2014, and then I got out of the Army in 2017, and that's really when I started to kind of explore and do all that stuff and trying to figure out who I was, and didn't decide to transition until 2019. But I took all that time. I'm very meticulous like that, and did all my research. And then I had, I've had bottom surgery, and I'm like, I've done all my research, and all that research, I know who the bad doctors are. I know who should have their license taken away, and I know all that stuff. But I never heard that story.
That's
And
crazy.
so with the amount of research that I've done, I can't believe I've never come across that.